Have you ever had a day that looked perfectly fine from the outside, but felt terrible on the inside? You answered every message, finished the work, and showed up for other people, yet one small mistake kept replaying in your mind while a quiet voice kept telling you that you should be doing more. You may even have reached the goal you were working toward and still felt strangely empty, worried that you were falling behind, or convinced that the next mistake would expose you. That feeling is often not caused by one dramatic failure. It is built from small habits of self-sabotage, criticizing yourself before anyone else can, trying to keep everyone happy, imagining the worst, comparing your life with someone else's highlight reel, or believing that your value must be earned again every morning. In How to Stop Feeling Like Shit, Andrea Owen examines 14 habits that can hold people back from happiness. Her approach is direct, practical, and focused on patterns many women are taught to normalize, including the imposter complex, the inner critic, catastrophizing, and people-pleasing. The central idea is simple. You do not need to become a completely different person to feel better. You need to notice the habits that quietly run your life, interrupt them, and practice a more honest response. This episode is not about pretending that difficult feelings do not exist. It is about refusing to add unnecessary suffering to an already difficult moment. For example, you make one error at work and immediately decide that everyone now sees you as incompetent. The event is small, but the story becomes enormous. Or a friend takes longer than usual to reply, and you begin reviewing every recent conversation to find what you did wrong. Nothing has been confirmed, but your nervous system is already reacting to a conclusion. So the first tool is simple. Separate the facts of the situation from the story your mind has added. The fact might be, my manager asked me to revise the report. The story might be, my manager thinks I am useless and I am about to lose my job. Those are not the same thing. That distinction gives you room to respond instead of react. One of the loudest habits Owen describes is the inner critic. The inner critic turns ordinary problems into evidence against you. It may sound protective. It may claim that criticism will keep you humble, prepared, or safe. It may tell you that if you attack yourself first, other people's criticism will hurt less. But constant self-attack does not create excellence. It creates exhaustion, hesitation, and a fear of being seen. The inner critic often speaks in absolutes. It says, you always mess things up, everyone else is ahead, or you are not ready. It takes a single moment and uses it to define the whole person. Notice how quickly this happens. A mistake becomes a personality. A delay becomes laziness. A disagreement becomes proof that you are difficult. A quiet day becomes proof that nobody cares. The first move is not to argue with every thought. It is to recognize the voice as a habit. A thought can be loud without being true. It can be familiar without being useful. You give a presentation and notice to awkward sentences. Instead of evaluating the presentation fairly, you replay those two sentences and ignore the parts that worked. Or you miss one workout and here, you have no discipline. That sentence hides the real information. You missed one workout and can choose what to do next. You might also notice the difference between correction and cruelty. Correction says, that section needs improvement. Cruelty says, you are hopeless. Correction points toward a next step. Cruelty keeps you staring at the past. When the inner critic appears, ask yourself, is this thought accurate, useful, and kind enough to guide my next action? If the answer is no, rewrite it in language that is honest but workable. I am terrible at this can become this skill still needs practice. I always ruin relationships can become I handled that conversation poorly. And I can repair what is repairable. The goal is not to flatter yourself. The goal is to speak in a way that helps you act. Once you start noticing that voice, you may discover another habit underneath it, the imposter complex. The imposter complex makes achievement feel accidental. You may believe you were lucky, that people have overestimated you, or that the next challenge will finally expose you. Instead of enjoying progress, you wait for discovery. This pattern becomes stronger when your standards keep moving. You reach one milestone, but it immediately becomes the minimum requirement for the next one. There is no moment when you are allowed to feel capable. You finish one project and immediately ask why it was not bigger. You receive praise and explain it away. You are invited into a room you once dreamed about entering, but you spend the whole time wondering who will notice that you do not belong. The answer is not to wait until doubt disappears. Doubt may still be present when you act. Confidence is often built after action, not before it. Imagine being invited to lead a project, but spending 2 weeks collecting more qualifications because you believe preparation must remove all uncertainty. Or imagine someone complimenting your work and you explain why it was easy, why the timing helped, or why anyone could have done it. In both cases, you are rejecting evidence that you are competent. A useful tool is to keep an evidence list. Record decisions you made, problems you solved, difficult conversations you completed, and feedback you received. Include small evidence, not only major achievements. You got up and started. You asked for help. You changed your mind when new information arrived. You finished something that used to intimidate you. Then consult the list when doubt rewrites your history. You do not need to feel like an expert before you take the next responsible step. Sometimes you simply need to be willing to be a beginner in public. But even when you have evidence, the mind can still jump ahead and create a disaster from a possibility. This is catastrophizing. Catastrophizing is the habit of treating a possible problem as if it were already a disaster. The mind jumps from, "This might be uncomfortable," to, "This will ruin everything." It feels like preparation, but it often steals energy from the problem that actually exists. The future deserves planning. It does not deserve unlimited punishment for events that have not happened. A useful distinction is probability versus possibility. Almost anything may be possible. That does not mean it is probable, and it does not mean you need to live emotionally inside that imagined outcome. Your manager asks to speak with you tomorrow, and your mind immediately predicts a reprimand, job loss, financial pressure, and a ruined career. A family member does not answer the phone, and your brain constructs a chain of emergencies before you have checked the basic facts. You feel a new physical sensation and search for the most frightening explanation. The search increases your anxiety, which creates more sensations to interpret. When this happens, slow the chain down. Name the feared outcome. Estimate its realistic probability. Ask what evidence supports it and what evidence does not. Then write one calm response you could take if it happened. You may discover that even a difficult outcome would contain steps, choices, support, and time. That brings you back from an imagined future to the next real choice. And many people discover that the next real choice is complicated by another habit, people-pleasing. People-pleasing looks generous, but it often contains fear. You say yes because you are afraid of disappointing someone. You stay quiet because disagreement feels dangerous. You take responsibility for other people's feelings because their discomfort feels like your failure. You become easy to depend on, but difficult to know. The cost is gradual. You lose contact with what you want, then feel resentful that nobody seems to notice your sacrifice. You may expect people to read the signals you never state clearly. You may hope that being endlessly helpful will guarantee love, respect, or security. But people cannot respect boundaries that have never been expressed, and they cannot respond to needs they have never heard. Being kind does not require permanent availability. A boundary is not a punishment. It is information about what you can genuinely offer. You accept extra work while already overloaded, then become angry when the person who asked does not realize how much it cost you. Or you agree to a social plan you do not want, cancel your own rest, and arrive irritated. Everyone receives a version of you that is present physically, but absent emotionally. You might also soften every opinion until nobody can understand what you actually think. The next time someone asks for something, replace the automatic yes with, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you." A pause gives your honest answer a chance to appear. If the answer is no, you do not need a courtroom speech. You can say, "I cannot take that on this week." If the answer is yes, let it be a real yes rather than a quiet agreement followed by resentment. As you become more honest about your limits, you may also notice how often perfectionism has been driving your decisions. Perfectionism can disguise itself as ambition. It tells you that flawless work will finally make you safe from criticism. Comparison then supplies a never-ending scoreboard. Someone else is more successful, more attractive, more organized, or further ahead. The problem is not having high standards. The problem is making self-respect conditional on meeting them. Perfectionism can create delay because an imperfect beginning feels like a public confession. It can create overwork because no amount of effort feels sufficient. It can also make you abandon a project when you realize it will not match the fantasy in your head. A healthier standard asks whether the work is effective, meaningful, and complete enough for its purpose. It does not ask whether the work proves that you deserve to be here. You delay publishing an article because you keep polishing the opening paragraph. The real fear is not grammar. It is being seen before you feel invulnerable. Or you compare your behind-the-scenes life with someone else's carefully edited public image, then use the comparison as evidence that you are failing. You see their finished result and compare it with your unfinished process. You see their confidence and forget the uncertainty they may have felt before the photograph, promotion, or announcement. To interrupt this pattern, define done before you begin. Decide what quality is required, what time is available, and what imperfection you are willing to tolerate. Ask, what is this task for? If the purpose is to send a useful update, it does not need to read like a masterpiece. If the purpose is to begin exercising, the first session does not need to transform your body. If the purpose is to reconnect with a friend, the message does not need to perfectly explain your entire emotional life. Still, even with clear standards and healthy boundaries, difficult emotions will appear. Another trap is treating uncomfortable emotions as emergencies. Anger, sadness, envy, shame, and fear arrive, and you immediately try to eliminate them, explain them, or judge yourself for having them. You may believe that a good person would not feel jealous. A strong person would not feel afraid. A grateful person would not feel disappointed. But emotions are not moral verdicts. They are signals shaped by your history, your needs, your body, and the situation in front of you. Owen's approach makes room for emotional honesty. Feeling bad is not the same as being broken. An emotion is information, but it is not always an instruction. You can acknowledge it without handing it the steering wheel. This also means taking responsibility for your behavior. Your feelings deserve compassion, but they do not automatically justify hurting yourself or someone else. You feel jealous when a colleague succeeds. Instead of shaming yourself, ask what the jealousy is pointing toward: recognition, freedom, mastery, or a goal you have postponed. You feel angry after a boundary is crossed. Instead of sending the first message that comes to mind, let the emotion settle. Then describe what happened and what needs to change. You feel sadness after a plan ends, and rather than rushing to declare that you should be over it, you give the loss a proper name. Use this sequence: I notice the feeling. I name the need. I choose the next behavior. This allows emotion to become information rather than identity. These habits are connected. The inner critic creates shame. Shame makes you seek approval. People-pleasing hides your needs. Hidden needs turn into resentment. Resentment fuels more self-criticism. Breaking the cycle requires small acts of self-trust. Tell the truth sooner. Make one decision without polling everyone. Let a reasonable task remain imperfect. Rest before your body forces you to stop. Ask for clarification instead of pretending you understand. Ask for help before the situation becomes a crisis. These actions may feel selfish at first because the old pattern trained you to disappear. You do not need to overhaul your personality. Choose one recurring moment and practice a different response there. Change becomes believable when you can see yourself keeping small promises. For example, Sunday evenings may trigger anxiety, so you prepare 3 priorities for Monday and stop turning the entire week into one giant emergency. Or you identify a relationship where you constantly perform competence and calmness, and you begin by saying one honest sentence instead of presenting a polished version of yourself. You might say, I am not ready to decide. I need more support, or that did not work for me. Choose one habit, one trigger, and one replacement behavior for the next 7 days. The goal is not to feel wonderful every minute. The goal is to stop making your life harder through automatic patterns that no longer protect you. Today, notice the sentence that appears when something goes wrong. Write down the facts. Identify the habit behind the reaction. Then choose one response that respects both reality and yourself. Instead of saying, I ruined everything, say, one part of this did not go well. I can repair what is repairable and learn what is useful. Instead of saying, they must be disappointed in me, say, I do not know what they feel. I can communicate clearly and allow them to own their response. Instead of saying, I have to do this perfectly, say, I can do this carefully, honestly, and well enough for its purpose. Stop asking, how do I become impossible to criticize? Start asking, what would self-respect look like in this moment? You are allowed to outgrow the habits that once helped you survive. You are allowed to disappoint someone in order to stop disappointing yourself. You are allowed to have a difficult day without turning it into a permanent identity. You are allowed to be a work in progress while still deserving respect. The next time you feel like you are failing at life, pause before accepting that label. Look for the habit underneath the feeling. Is the inner critic speaking in absolutes? Is the imposter complex dismissing your evidence? Is catastrophizing predicting a future that has not arrived? Is people-pleasing asking you to abandon your own needs? Is perfectionism making a normal task feel like a final exam? Once you name the pattern, you have more choice. That choice may be small. It may be one honest sentence, one boundary, one imperfect attempt, or one moment of rest. Small choices matter because they teach your mind that the old habit is not the only available response. So the practical challenge is this. For the next 7 days, choose one moment when you usually turn against yourself. Write down what happened, what your mind said, and what a more respectful response would sound like. Do not try to fix every habit at once. Build awareness first, then practice one replacement. If you slip, do not turn the slip into proof that you cannot change. Begin again with the next available moment. Andrea Owen's message is direct because self-sabotage thrives in vagueness. If you call everything just who I am, you cannot change it. If you call every uncomfortable feeling a crisis, you cannot learn from it. If you call every boundary selfish, you will keep abandoning yourself to maintain peace. The goal is not to feel wonderful every minute. The goal is to stop making your life harder through automatic patterns that no longer protect you. Today, notice the sentence that appears when something goes wrong. Write down the facts. Identify the habit behind the reaction. Then choose one response that respects both reality and yourself. Ask, what would self-respect look like in this moment? You may not be able to control every thought, every emotion, or every person's opinion, but you can become more careful about which thoughts you believe, which feelings you obey, and which relationships require you to disappear. You can learn to support yourself without making excuses, correct yourself without cruelty, and pursue growth without treating your current self as an enemy. You are allowed to outgrow the habits that once helped you survive. You are allowed to build a life that is not organized around proving your worth. You are allowed to feel uncertain and still move forward. In the next episode, we will explore another practical idea for understanding your mind and making better choices with it. Until then, listen, reflect, and apply. If this episode helped you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more podcast-style summaries on mindset, productivity, and personal growth.